the dawn. Rationality ex post facto. Whatever lives long is gradually so saturated with reason that its irrational origins become improbable. Does not almost every accurate history of the origin of something sound paradoxical and sacrilegious to our feelings? Doesn't the good historian contradict all the time? The morality of voluntary suffering. What is the supreme enjoyment for men who live in the state of war? Of those small, continually endangering communities which are characterized by the strictest mores. In other words, for vigorous, vindictive, vicious, suspicious souls who are prepared for what is most terrible and hardened by deprivations and mores. The enjoyment of cruelty. And in these circumstances, it is even accounted among the virtues of such a soul if it is inventive and insatiable in cruelty. The community feels refreshed by cruel deeds and casts off for once the gloom of continual anxiety and caution. Cruelty belongs to the most ancient festive joys of mankind. Hence one supposes that the gods, too, feel refreshed and festive when one offers them the sight of cruelty. And so the idea creeps into the world that voluntary suffering, torture one has chosen oneself, has value and makes good sense. Gradually, the Moors shape a communal practice in accordance with this idea. All extravagant well-being henceforth arouses some mistrust, and all hard and painful states more and more confidence. One supposes that the gods might look upon us ungraciously because of our happiness, and graciously because of our suffering. Not by any means with pity, for pity is considered contemptible and unworthy of a strong and terrible soul, rather graciously, because it delights them and puts them in good spirits. For those who are cruel enjoy the supreme titillation of the feeling of power. Thus, the concept of the most moral man of the community comes to contain the virtue of frequent suffering, deprivation, a hard way of life, and of cruel self-mortification, not, to say this again and again, as a means of self-discipline, self-control, and the desire for individual happiness, but as a virtue that makes the community look good to the evil gods, steaming up to them like a continual sacrifice of atonement upon some altar. All those spiritual leaders of peoples who succeeded in stirring something in the inert but fertile mud of their moors had need not only of madness, but also of voluntary torture to engender faith. And most, and first of all, as always, their faith in themselves. The more their own spirit moved along novel paths and was therefore tormented by pangs of conscience and anxieties, the more cruelly they raged against their own flesh, their own desires, and their own health, as if they wanted to offer the deity some substitute of gratification, in case it should perhaps be embittered on account of customs one had neglected and fought against, and new goals one had championed. Let us not believe too quickly that now we have rid ourselves completely of such a logical feeling. Let the most heroic souls question themselves about this. Every smallest step on the field of free thought in the individually formed life has always been fought for with spiritual and physical torments, not only moving forward, no, above all, moving, motion, change have required innumerable martyrs. All through the long, path-seeking and basic millennia of which, to be sure, people don't think when they talk, as usual, about world history, that ridiculously small segment of human existence. And even in this so-called world history, which is at bottom much ado about the latest news, there is no really more important theme than the primordial tragedy of the martyrs who wanted to move the swamps. Nothing has been bought more dearly than that little bit of human reason and of a feeling of freedom that now constitutes our pride. But it is this very pride that now makes it almost impossible for us to feel with those vast spans of time characterized by the morality of wars, which antedate world history as the real and decisive main history that determined the character of humanity, when suffering was a virtue, cruelty a virtue, dissimulation a virtue, revenge a virtue, the slander of reason a virtue, while well-being was a danger, the craving for knowledge a danger, peace a danger, pity a danger, being pitied ignominy, work ignominy, madness divine, change immoral, and pregnant with disaster. You think that all this has changed, and that humanity must thus have changed its character? You who think you know men, learn to know yourselves better.